Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Vendor Voices podcast. This is your co-host, Sammi, wedding photographer, and I'm here with my co-host,
Korrigan. Hey, wedding filmmaker in Chicago. We're both in Chicago, Illinois. We're excited to dive into today's wedding topic, which is advice for vendors from couples about being a wedding vendor. So it's a really cool take. We saw this inspo from a different wedding podcast as well. So we're like, oh, this is a really cool idea. And we obviously were able to do some collecting and find some other other pieces of advice that weren't covered. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah. So we'll be sharing insights straight from couples, what they wish their vendors knew.
Yeah. Well, without further ado, let's dive in, Sammi.
Let's dive in. So the first piece of advice that couples wish vendors knew is that communication is everything.
Totally.
It seems obvious, but, one listener said, we appreciated vendors who kept us informed, answered emails promptly, and set clear expectations. A quick response reduces stress.
Totally. I would have to completely agree with this, especially since I'm kind of on both sides of the fence. We've obviously talked about this. I'm a groom-to-be as well as obviously a vendor. Whenever Reagan and I do our weekly wedding planning, if we start a wedding planning session, which could be 2, 3, maybe even 4 hours of what we're doing that day, if we reach out to somebody early on in the session and they get back to us when we're still in that mindset, I'm like, oh, this is amazing. I can just get the answer I was looking for, and that just helps us in our day of planning, rather than if they got back to us a day or two later and I'm doing something else, we're not together, and then we might have to wait to tackle it the next planning session.
Right, for sure. Yeah, I mean, even just a quick got it text, I'll reply when I can, but I got this message and I'm, working on it. I'll get you a response by the end of the day. Just communicating is really key. And even pertaining to editing of the photos and videos, couples want to know, they might reach out, hey, just checking in, when can I expect to get my photos or videos? It's always great to just, be communicative with them and let them know, right? Hey, you should expect to have them by such and such day. And if that changes, then
let them know.
Be proactive and communicate that, because it seems couples really appreciated vendors who took the time to be proactive and communicate those things. So I think that's really important for sure. Another one was just the idea of helping the couples feel at ease. Couples, want to feel like they're more than just a booking or a number,
Totally.
And so one listener said the best vendors made us feel like more than just a booking. That personal touch goes really far.
Yeah. No, I agree. And that's something I definitely strive to do with each one of my couples is again, on our discovery call, I'm getting to know a bit about the relationship. I'm making sure that I fully understand their vision for their wedding film. Do you want this to be an upbeat, happy, funny kind of video? Or do you want that, more serious kind of tone that, just shows the importance of the day?
Yeah.
It can be a wide range of what people want. It's if I just treat every film oh, this is just another film, they all look the same, that's not going to be a fruitful business on my end, as well as a fruitful experience for the couple.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think that's key as well. And even just a handwritten note, for example, gifting them a little something on the wedding day.
Totally.
Some couples, I'll even ask, what's your coffee order? And bring their coffee,
Yeah, that can mean so much, especially in the morning when it's so stressful.
For sure.
Yeah.
We strive to make our couples feel like they really do matter, because they do.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how busy and successful we are. We're gonna make sure that each couple feels like they get that personal touch.
Totally. Yeah. Definitely. There's a certain amount of one-on-one time is needed with each couple, and if that is foregone with something else, if you overbook your season or something like that, that's on you to be oh, I'm overbooked. I need to somehow find a way that I'm making sure that this level of one-on-one attention remains even among all my couples.
Yeah. And that's why I've started limiting the amount of weddings that I take on each year.
Totally.
And even each month, because doing double header weddings or sometimes even triple header weddings.
Yeah.
You know, by the third day, I'm tired, you know.
For those who don't know, if you're not a vendor, a double header or a triple header is 2 or 3 weddings in one weekend.
Yeah.
Can be a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had a weekend this year where I was like in Michigan for one, and then the next day I was like back in Chicago, and then I had one like out in the burbs. I was just like bouncing all around the Midwest, and I was like, okay, this was a very successful weekend for me, but at the same time, like, I'm exhausted now.
I want to die.
And yeah, I'm like, okay. And now I have to edit all of these and make sure that I'm like delivering on my promises to like with timelines and all of that. So I've realized, you know, okay, I can limit myself. I don't have to take on every single booking. And that's going to also allow me to like help my couples feel at ease, because they're going to feel like that personalized, you know, touch with like being able to stay on top of everything. And
totally. I've also heard one of my other friends who's a vendor adjusts their delivery timelines based on the time of year. Like if it's busy season, it'll be a bit longer than if I'm doing your wedding in like, you know, November or December, when I'm like, I might have 2 weddings that month as opposed to like 4 to 8 or something crazy.
Right.
So yeah, that can be helpful as well. Just to make sure that's upfront and stated. Like if your wedding's in July, you might wait a bit longer than somebody in December.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yep, for sure. Another one is just couples want vendors to be honest about what's really possible. One listener said, we valued vendors who set clear expectations and offered solutions when needed. You know, like a lot of vendors, they want to like overpromise, I think, on what they're able to do, because maybe they feel like, oh, if I...
It's like a selling point.
Yeah, like, oh, I'll have your photos to you within a week or something.
Yeah.
When like they know that's not realistic.
Totally.
It's like, it's better just to be, you know, honest about what's really possible than to overpromise and underdeliver.
Say sorry on the back end. Yeah.
Yeah, that's not a good way to.
There definitely can be 1 week deliverables. Like I definitely do teasers within a week of a wedding, which is like, you know, that's a 30-second to 60-second short for like Instagram or, you know, TikTok or something where it's like a shorter form video, because it's, you know, I don't have to, it's not the full film, and it gives my couples a little like sneak of like what's to come a few weeks later.
Yeah.
So I enjoy like the 1 week deliverables, but again, if it's busy season, sometimes it's like, oh, this is going to get to you in like 8 or 9 days, as opposed to like the 1 week I've had to say like once or twice. But like most of my couples have been like, okay, I'm down to wait another day or two.
Yeah, as long as you're communicating and like they're not just like,
and it's not like the day they were expecting it. I told them like in advance, like, hey, I did a triple header this weekend. I'm doing 2 or 3 teasers this week as opposed to just one. So,
yeah, for sure. Yeah. Another listener says, you know, just keep the experience enjoyable, because, you know, they said your energy shapes our day. So bring excitement, bring joy, like come ready to, you know, celebrate with us.
Totally.
Obviously it's a job for us, and like some people hate their jobs and they show up to work like, oh, I don't want to be here. But like that's not the case for us. We're in this industry because we love it.
Yeah.
But I suppose there are probably vendors out there who maybe this is their second job, and like they have a 9 to 5 that's super demanding, and so they just do this maybe like every once in a while to like make a few extra bucks.
Sure.
But like if you're showing up to a couple's wedding and you're like exhausted and not ready to celebrate with them, like they're gonna remember that experience that they had, you know?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think it's important. Each time I show up to a wedding, I'm like, I get to go to a wedding today. That's like so awesome. Like a lot of people, like this might sound corny to like, you know, if there's like a 10-year vendor out there, but like, oh, I gotta go to another wedding. But hopefully if you're in this industry for 10 years, it's because you love it. It's not every time I'm like, oh, I get to go to a wedding. All my friends, it's like, oh, I might get to go to like maybe 3 to 5 weddings in my lifetime. And I'm like, that's like a month for me.
Yeah.
Like I get to go to so many of these, and all the times, like obviously there's some that I remember more than others, because there's always like highlights and moments in life where it's like, oh, that was awesome. There's like some like crowd surfing or something happened. Like there's an interesting moment. But it's always so fun that I'm like, wow, I get to be here for this person's like highlight of their life, possibly, you know. It's like their wedding day. I'm literally getting to be such an integral that's an integral part of that day. So yeah, it's such a blessing
for sure. Another one is be professional but be human too. You know, somebody said we clicked with vendors who balanced professionalism with also being kind and having like a nice personality, like easy to work with, right?
Yeah.
You know, I think that's really important, because obviously we want to be professional. We want to, you know, we want to have like a good professional experience that we're giving to our couples. Like we have to like, you know, remind them that like we need them to sign a contract and we need to do these like legalese type things.
Sure.
But like that should never take the forefront or like be the focus too much where they don't feel like, you know, we're actually just humans that do genuinely care about the couple.
Totally. And a lot of the times it's the couple's like first time getting married.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, this is a whole new territory for them. So it's a lot, that human element can go a long way for a vendor, I've learned, especially like, you know, when I first got started, I was very human. I was almost probably too human about it because I needed a bit more of the professionalism when I first got started. But it's so important to remember like, oh, this person might not know this, or this person might think they're asking a dumb question. And, you know, there's no dumb questions.
Yeah.
When it's your first time getting married and you have no like idea what you're doing, like ask me anything. I'm here to answer. There is no dumb question at all. So yeah, that can definitely go a long way. Yeah. I see that.
Another one is that flexibility matters. You know, the best vendors stayed calm when plans shifted and found solutions. That's a good one.
Yeah, I like that. Also, I'm going to shout out, there was a train that just honked in the background. So if you hear that, you're not on a railroad. If you're driving right now, you're safe.
Yes,
we're just near a train right now. No, I like that. Flexibility is definitely key. Obviously, there's a certain level to where flexibility on the wedding day, 100%. But like my calendar is my calendar is my calendar.
Yeah.
You know, it's also just like, I might not be able to shoot your wedding if I'm already booked.
Yeah,
like,
right.
That's obvious, but
yeah. If you change your wedding day, like
if you change your wedding day on me and we already signed a contract for a different day, I've never had that happen. But if that does happen, it's like, we have to do a whole new contract. I might not even be available. Like, this is crazy. What's going on?
Yeah. So flexibility on both ends, I suppose.
I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Another one is guide us. We value your expertise. They said, we need your guidance, you know, from timeline tips to how to pose naturally. We kind of touched on this before, but like, yeah, a lot of couples, this is their first time planning a wedding. So they need some guidance, you know, and if we just jump right into like, okay, this is what I need you to do. And like, this is, you know, XYZ, and I need you to sign this contract and make this deposit and da-da-da. Like, you know, they need more guidance too from planning their timeline and all of that.
Yeah, I definitely like when I'm able to jump in. I'm not claiming to be a wedding planner, but I definitely know where video fits into a schedule. So it's like, if they're like, oh, we're looking to book you for X amount of hours, I'm like, oh, that's great. But also like, I see on your timeline, there's like a huge grand finale, like an hour after I leave. Like it might be worth like adding an hour or starting me a bit later so I capture that big finale moment.
Totally.
So like, you know, coming to like some kind of middle ground with a couple and being like, hey, let's not miss this, because this would be pretty epic for the film. So
Totally. And also just like helping them pose naturally. I get that one a lot. Like couples will always be like,
you're great at posing couples. I love watching you pose couples because it's like, wow, Sammi is on it. If someone's like feeling uncomfortable on camera, you're like, just like this, even if you need a photo of like what it looks like.
Totally. Yeah. I love showing inspo, just to be like, hey, this is what we're, you know, going for. Like, we're not copying it. We're going to make it uniquely theirs, but you know, we're using it as inspo, right? To be like, okay, so, you know, just turn a little bit more this way, put your hand like right here on his face, you know, this helping to guide them. One of the biggest pieces of feedback I get is that people say that I make them feel really comfortable in front of the camera.
Yeah, that's
which
great.
Makes me feel so good. Anytime I get that compliment, I'm like, oh, that's so great. Like, I'm so glad, because that's what you want. Like, you don't, like, that's I don't know if you're ever,
thing.
Like I spend some time on the other side of the camera. Like, I just did a modeling gig for a brand here in Chicago. And you know, it's interesting because like whenever the tables are turned and I'm in front of the camera, like I'm always like picking up on little things, like just the experience that like the photographer gives to the couple, or to like myself in this case. Like I was in front of the camera and I'm like they're just taking photos and like they're not saying anything, and I'm like
am I feeling uncomfortable right now?
I'm like, does it look okay? Like, am I doing a good job?
Can
like,
I see that,
do you,
actually?
Like, do you want me to adjust anything? Like, like help me, help me know that like I'm doing what you asked me to do. Like, give me a thumbs up. Like, yes, that's perfect. This looks great. Like, you know, I end up, when I'm behind the camera, I'm always like the hype girl.
Trying to hype up.
Couples.
That's so
I'm like,
nice.
you guys look amazing. And I'm not just saying that. Like, like if they don't, like I'm going to let's just tweak this, turn this way a little bit. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Perfect. Oh, that looks so good. You know, I'm just like helping them feel comfortable and at ease, which is important. So.
And I have a quick tip also for couples in this same vein. Like if you are someone who feels like, oh yeah, give me a lot of direction, totally say that in your discovery call.
Yeah, let us
Be
know.
like, hey, I'm someone who's kind of more uncomfortable on cameras. Like if it's group photos, I even feel a little like uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So like, we know going into your day, like, oh, this is someone who like wants to be led.
Yeah.
Other people sometimes are like comfortable on camera and they don't want the whole day to feel like a photo shoot.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like almost like over direction is like, can be a negative to some couples.
Yeah.
So it's like, if you want that, say that, because then it's like, oh, we know exactly what you want. We got you.
Yeah.
Or we can be like, oh, they got it. We barely need to do any like direction and it's going to turn out amazing.
Yeah, for sure. Let's see. So another one is couples sit for advice give to wedding vendors to respect our vision. One listener said, you know, we hired you for your style, but loved that you listened to our vision.
Okay.
I think that's really cool. I mean, it's like, yeah, like in one respect, yeah, like you should work with vendors that you love their style.
Yeah.
But like hopefully that vendor also is taking the time to like listen to what your vision is, and they're not just like, oh, well, this is our style, so this is what we're gonna like do for you.
This is what we're gonna do.
It's like, well, what is your style? What is your vision? You
Totally.
know, this is what we can do for you. But like we, as a photographer, as a videographer, like, you know, we're very flexible in terms of like, okay, if you have a vision that, you know, you have something really cool you want to try, like most times like we're totally down to try that, you know.
100%.
Like, yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it's super fun when people come to me like, hey, I had this idea, like I think it'd be really cool to, you know, do XYZ. I'm like, sweet. Like,
no, I love that.
You know,
I feel like that I love when couples like just let me know their vision too. I just got off a discovery call for a wedding I have in May, and they were like, yeah, we're definitely looking to make this more like an upbeat video. We're wanting more like of the reception, the fun moments, like maybe like 70 or 80% fun and like 20% serious for like the ceremony segments. I'm like, oh, that's great. Like when I started filmmaking, I was definitely more so on the like slow, beautiful shots, very like cinematic kind of feel. And so I've like over the past few years, I've been like, okay, how can I like up my game for like the fun moments and like making this feel more upbeat? And I love that now. It's honestly become one of my favorite parts. So now I'm super stoked for this wedding because I was like, I didn't exactly know what the couple was wanting like over the first call, but after like, this is like more of a final details call. I'm like, okay, sick. This is more of a 70% fun and upbeat. So I'm like, able to adjust that based on their vision.
Cool. Yeah, I love that. I'm excited to see how that.
Yeah, I'm excited for this one too. It's a friend of mine as well, so I'm like,
Amazing.
I'm really looking forward to that one.
That's cool. That'll be even more fun. Then, for sure. Yeah, it's nice when you know the couple, because then you also know like their dynamics and their personality a little bit. I like to send out a questionnaire to my couples to like better get to know them. And I mean, like we go through a lot of it when we're just like meeting, like FaceTiming or whatever before they actually book with me.
Yeah.
But what I've started doing too is just sending like a more in-depth questionnaire, like, and then it allows me to go back and reference it too. Like, you know, what's your style? Are you guys more playful? Like, do you like the whole like being picked up and like spun around, like kind of fun? Some people are like, I would rather not, like, I don't want to do the whole, like, you know, they're not comfortable with it. Right. Like, so it just depends on their style, but yeah, respecting their vision, and that's a good one,
so
of course. And getting to know their vision, obviously.
Totally.
So you can respect it.
Yep. 100%.
Another one is, another piece of advice is go the extra mile. Seems like an obvious one, but I think it's important. One listener said, you know, the smallest gestures, like helping to fix, you know, my dress or hold my dress or handing us water or, building in time for us to just like breathe and have time together, like really stood out.
Yeah, that can be important.
Yeah, because I mean, you know, as a photographer, you know, I'm capturing all these moments throughout the day, and like it can be tempting to be like, hey, we have so much more light, like let's just squeeze in a few more photos here. When it like you have to read the room in the sense that like,
do they need 10 minutes?
Do they need 10 minutes? Yeah. Like, you know, I had a couple this summer. We were outside. It was like the middle of summer, and she was like starting to, like, I was noticing she was starting to feel like a little faint, and she was starting to get kind of like sweaty and like a little pale. Yeah. And she even said like, I'm feeling a little woozy, like I'm feeling a little faint. And like, I could have just been like, well, we only have 5 minutes. We need to push through these photos. Yeah. But instead we were like, you know what? what's more important is that she does not faint right now.
Oh, yeah.
So I had my assistant go run and get her water.
So smart.
We found a place for her to sit down where, you know, wasn't going to get her dress dirty.
Yeah.
And we just, like, let her breathe and, like, gave it, like, 10 minutes. And then, you know, we were like, okay, how are you feeling? Do you want to get back to taking photos? Or, like, and she actually said, you know what, no, like, I kind of just want to go inside and, like, I think I need some sugar. Like, I need to eat something.
Sure.
And we were like, okay, let's go do that. Like, that's more important. And, like, I was tempted, you know, in one respect to be like, but we didn't get enough, you know, solo shots of you yet. But I'm like, well, but what's more important is, like,
her well-being. And she's going to understand that on the delivery side. Like, okay, maybe their package might have a few less, like, couples moments, just them, like, in that time frame. But, like, she's going to know, like, oh, I needed that time.
Yeah,
like,
and she's going to remember that, like, we went the extra mile to make sure that she was comfortable and that she was feeling okay. And that, you know, we ran to get her water and, like, that, you know, we were just, like, making sure that, like, she was feeling her best.
Totally.
Right? Like, she's going to remember that more probably than, you know, oh, like, I didn't get 5 extra photos of me. Like, you know what I'm saying? That
reminds me of a time this past summer. I was shooting a wedding with my good friend Nick. He's, like, one of my favorite other filmmakers to work with. And we were shooting a wedding. Shout out Nick. We were shooting a wedding in Lake Geneva in Wisconsin. And for some reason, I don't know what was going on, but I'm obviously not naming names or anything, but the florist was running behind or something was up with their schedule where we were doing group photos, like the whole wedding party outside of the venue, just like our little, like, hour time frame. But the girls did not have their bouquets yet. Like, they hadn't brought their bouquets. They were like, where are our bouquets? And Nick literally was like, we waited like maybe 10 minutes. Like, we told them where to bring the bouquets, but they were, like, busy setting up something else for the ceremony or something. And Nick literally ran like a quarter mile to, like, where the florist was, grabbed the bouquets that he saw, and he, like, ran them down to us, and everyone, like, cheered for him. I even have a clip of him, like, running down this. It was crazy. And it was just so funny just seeing him, like, run down this big hill holding this, like, they had this, like, long thing for all the bouquets. Yeah. And he was just, like, holding that. I'm glad he didn't drop them. Yeah, but it was a crazy moment. It was really cool. That would definitely be, like, that's a big moment of, like, going above and beyond, because, like, a lot of other filmmakers might not have thought to do that. But Nick just jumped on it. It was crazy.
That's amazing. Yeah. That's cool. Okay, another piece of advice. We just have a few more here, but be transparent with pricing and timelines. Yeah. You know, one listener says, you know, we don't want any surprises, just clear pricing and timelines from the start. Okay. You know, I think transparency really does help to build that trust. And, like, couples, especially, I'm sure you could speak to this from perspective of, like, booking with vendors. Yeah. But, like, you know, it's important that you know, like, when you're expected to, like, pay. Like, for example, if when you're starting to talk with a vendor and they're like, yeah, so these are my package pricings, like, that's one step to be transparent about your pricing. But then it's also like, okay, when am I going to be expected to, like, pay for this? Like, do you need all up front? Is it 50% deposit? Is it 25% deposit? Like, when am I going to have to pay in full by, like, you know? So having that clearly outlined, I think, really helps couples to just, it makes it easier for them to commit to working with you, first of all. Yeah. Because they're able to, like, know if it works within their ability to actually. Yeah.
Just having, like, a general, like, payment plan outline, maybe say, like, this percentage, like, 3 months out, this percentage 6 months out, something similar like that. So, like, a couple doesn't know, like, oh, this is, like, maybe this might be, like, a $4,000 vendor. Do I want to drop $4,000 today? Like, thinking, like, they might need to pay the whole thing right now. Right. That can be definitely crucial, as well as, like, just, pricing. Like, having a starting price listed is so important. We've run into some vendors where it's like, this vendor looks really nice, but, like, there's not even a starting price listed. Like, do I want to reach out? And this might just be, like, way out of my budget. Like, do I want to spend the time to actually reach out, where there's, like, 3 other vendors that, like, have their starting price, and I know that's in our budget. So we're going to reach out to them. Yeah. So that can be super important.
All right, so our last tip from our couples is to work well with other vendors.
Oh, yeah.
One couple said, you know, a great vendor team working together well with other vendors just makes the day seamless. Seems obvious to me, but...
don't want any vendor fights.
No.
It's, pretty intense. Obviously, this definitely seems like a no-brainer, right? But I will say there has been one wedding where there was, like, a crazy fight between 2 different vendors that I've been on. And I was like, this is insane. I like got my phone out to record it like it was like World Star. It was like a crazy moment. So it's like, just avoid those. We don't need this happening. Thankfully, it was like not in front of the couple, it was not in front of the guests. It was like kind of in like, you know, back areas, but I'm like, still that set the tone for the wedding and like the rest of it. Thankfully, it was like when people were leaving for like, we were leaving and like, so we didn't get to see like what else happened afterwards, but I was like, this is crazy. I'm glad we're getting out of here. So I have seen it go down. So it's like, definitely as a vendor, make sure you're just like, we're all one big team. Yeah. That's really what it is.
And I mean, it can be tricky because you don't know these other vendors. Sometimes like we're all getting placed together and you've never met, you don't know how they work, you don't know how they operate. And maybe you're used to something like being done a certain way. Like if you're working with another video team, for example, like as a photographer, like if I'm working with a videographer I've never worked with before, it's just about like pulling them aside beforehand and being like, hey, you know, during ceremony, this is where I'm going to be. Where are you going to be? So we're not like getting in each other's shot.
Shooting into each other.
You know, or during first dances, like, you know, like there's going to be a specific, like sometimes a couple will say like, oh, we're going to do this special lift and, make sure you get this. Yeah. And so they're going to be doing that like over here. So I'm going to be here. You know, where are you going to be? Like, I'll make sure not to get in your shot or not get in your way, or, you know, just like working seamlessly with another vendor team, like is really important. It'll help make the day seamless for not just the couple, but for the vendors as well.
Yeah. So it's all about just using those same people skills that you have to work excellently with your couple, with your other teammates.
Yeah.
So
And who knows, it can lead to other opportunities. Great like opportunities. Look at us, you know, we got placed together on a wedding a few years ago and as strangers, and I think it was probably once we sat down for like our vendor meal. And honestly, the Vendor Voices podcast was kind of born in that moment because we were like, we're just talking about our experiences as vendors and like networking and like, and I remember you were like, we should start a podcast. And I was like, oh my gosh, like,
are we doing this?
And look at us now. That's so cool. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, that's a great tip.
Yeah. Well, that's a wrap on, you know, advice from couples to wedding vendors. We hope that you found this really helpful if you're a wedding vendor and if you're a couple as well.
Might be helping with some questions to ask your vendors on calls, maybe. Like just things to look out for too. Like great topics. Shout out to all the, you know, couples that helped us formulate this list online. We really appreciate it. So some interesting stuff.
For sure. Yeah.
Well, Sammi, where can they find you to ask you questions about what you do as a vendor on wedding days?
You can find me at Captured by Sammi. And how about you, Korrigan?
Yeah. Check me out on Instagram at Korrigan.mp4 and make sure you follow the podcast at the Vendor Voices on Instagram.
Subscribe, like, leave a comment. It really helps us. Ring the bell. Yeah. The notification bell so you don't miss any updates. And, also, you know, if you found value in these tips, share it. We would love if you shared this podcast, and we really appreciate it. So until next time, happy planning.
All right. See you guys.
See ya.
Bye.